Hello, 8th graders. Our topic today for this week's lessons is going to be invasive species. Now, invasive species are basically a organism, so plant, insect, mammal, bird, whatever, that is from a different area but is able to outcompete the native vegetation. So I'm coming to you today from Lum's Pond, because at Lum's Pond, they have a very unique story about an invasive species. So when Lum's Pond was first opened, they had some problems with soil erosion. So they were told, right, by the Delaware Department of Forestry to help with their soil erosion, plant this shrub. It does a really great job. The shrub's called autumn olive. Well, autumn olive is from China. It did a great job at soil erosion, but they quickly found out that it spread. The birds loved it. They ate all of the fruit that it had, but one autumn olive plant produces 200,000 seeds a year. So the birds ate the fruit, spread it everywhere, and then the entire understory of the forest becomes this thick, dense layer of autumn olive and nothing else. So last week we kind of talked a little bit about biodiversity. Biodiversity is really important. So if you have one plant that's taking up the entire understory and not allowing any other plants to grow there, that becomes a problem. Unfortunately, a lot of the invasive species we have around here is because somebody was trying to do something really awesome and we brought in something that wasn't from around here and it just goes badly. Another huge example that we really have a problem with in Delaware is this absolutely gorgeous tree. Look at the beautiful flowers. Here, we're growing in like right off of the bottom of a very large established tree, yet it's still able to like squeeze in and get enough light to survive. It's beautiful, right? Who wouldn't want this in their front yard? Unfortunately, everyone wants it in their front yard. It's called a Bradford pear tree. Bradford pear trees, once again, this one didn't come because we were trying to do something good. This one came because it's pretty. I wanted this in my front yard. Today, even still, every new development lines their streets with Bradford pear trees. But unfortunately, it has an evil side. It can outcompete the native vegetation. Once again, why is that bad? It's gorgeous, right? It gets fruit. Not like fruit that we can eat, but the birds eat it. So what's the problem with it then? Well, it can grow anywhere. It minimizes the biodiversity, right? Biodiversity, variety of life is very, very important because not everything can eat the Bradford pear tree. So what about the plants that need to have, the maple tree, the butterflies, the caterpillars that depend upon that type of tree? Because there are some organisms that can only live in a certain type. So if the Bradford pear tree comes in and overtakes the entire forest, well, now what happens to those other organisms? It all comes down to a new vocabulary word. It's called a niche. Okay? A niche is basically the job of an organism. No two organisms can occupy the same niche. So what happens with an invasive species is the invasive species then is able to outcompete the native variety, that native species that would normally occupy that niche. And the other one goes away. And then only the invasive species can be there. But then what about all of the other organisms that depended upon the job of the native species, what happens to them? They go away. So it becomes this big snowball effect. Invasive species, unfortunately, are predominant everywhere. How many of you ever seen honeysuckle? Honeysuckle grows everywhere. It takes over. Multiflora rose. It's a beautiful plant. People used to plant it in their gardens as hedges. But now, every forest in Delaware, if you look at the outside of the forest, it's all multiflora rose and Japanese honeysuckle. Okay guys, so right here we have multiflora rose, okay? It's part of the rose species, right? Everybody loves roses. Inside of this multiflora rose though, you can see there are native plants trying to grow, right? Right back here. This is tulip poplar. It's a great native tree. It's most likely gonna die though because of the multiflora rose. And then what will also happen is you'll get the multiflora rose and then you'll get vines that wrap themselves in it, like the honeysuckle. That's what this is right here. It's like this big combination of horrible invasive species. Okay guys, one last invasive species for you, okay? If you look behind us, this is Phragmites. Phragmites is from Japan. It originally came to the United States through shipping crates, okay? They used it to pack stuff. But then the seeds, when they would unpack everything, would spread everywhere. And this is just a ditch in the middle of a forest. The wetlands are covered with it. It spreads through a rhizome, which is basically like a really strong like bamboo root that goes underground. So right here, it's even been mowed frequently. Yet still, this right here, this is all the Phragmites coming back up, right? You can't pull it up. It has razor sharp leaves, so when you try to pull it up with the big ones, it'll actually slice your hands and give you like paper cuts. Lots of invasive species in Delaware, guys. And, you know, once again, limiting the biodiversity. Look at how dense it is in there, right? What would be an open, like wetland, treed area is now being filled with an invasive species. So this week, you guys are actually going to be researching your own invasive species that's found in Delaware. You're going to use this invasive species to create a project next week, okay? So this week, you're basically focusing on learning about the invasive species, finding information about a specific invasive species, and next week, you're going to be creating a wanted poster with the information that you find this week. Remember, if you have any questions, you need help with something, find me on a Zoom, send me a message. I'm here to help you guys, okay? Have a great week.